What Did I Say with Dan Rothenberg.
Hello and welcome to the show. If your child is struggling with anxiety, stress, academics, homework procrastination, bullying, resiliency, check out my website, OneYouCoach.com. That's OneYouCoach.com. Check out my services as a life coach and therapist. What's the difference between therapy and life coaching? Couple of things. First of all, therapy deals with the past experiences, family relationships, and trauma. Coaching deals with the present and future. Therapy technically deals with dysfunction and diagnosis. Often individuals that are not functioning, not tending to their responsibility. Coaching deals with people who are functional, perhaps stuck in some stress and anxiety, but just want to do better, want to thrive, move into their optimal level of performance. Sometimes I get young people, teenagers that are sent to me for therapy, because that's what we do in our society. Kids have a problem, call the therapist. And coaching might actually be a better fit. So it's something to consider, even whether with me or someone else. Okay, so say to yourself, okay, my child is having a tough time, but he's also showing up at school, he's doing his homework, he just seems a little off, he seems a little stuck, his confidence seems down. A coach might be a better fit because coaching is really motivating and inspiring, and it takes your child's strengths and builds on them. It's very powerful. So you might be asking yourself, am I a coach or am I a therapist? I am a coach with a therapy background. So I am doing life coaching with your teenager or young adult. However, 10 years as a therapist, I have a lot of tools in my box to deal with stress and anxiety, which can also be a part of what a coach does. Speaking of coaching, I am very excited for my guest on this episode. I'm always excited, as you know, but this is a big get for me. Dr. Leah Mazzola is the founder of the Youth Coaching Institute, which is the gold standard for training coaches like myself that work with young people. She started the organization, I believe, in 2013 as a solo practitioner like me, and it just grew into what it is today, which is, I believe, 8 or more staff and faculty. And it grew out of her passion for her community and for her wanting to get young people the help that they needed. We're going to talk about how to support, as parents, how to support our teenagers academically at school, how to create an environment that sets them up for success, and how we should define success for our teenagers academically. By the way, before we get to it, I apologize for the technology. Now, Dr. Leah, as you'll see, has a beautiful webcam, nice background. For some reason, my webcam didn't work, so I'm hunched over, and I think it's possibly in black and white, like I'm going for some film noir effect. It's all just my technical ineptness. I apologize, and I won't let it happen again. And now, without further ado, Dr. Leah Mazzola. Dr. Leah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this. Good to see you in person.
So I wanted to ask you, actually, when I was writing out my questions, first question I was going to ask is, like, as a life coach, what do you see? What are the trends you see in successful young people that are successful academically? And then I just thought, well, let me pull it back and say, how do you define success? What's a healthy definition of success for our kids?
Okay. How do you define success? So first off, as a coach, I just have to throw out there that it's not about our defining success for our kids. It's about helping them to define success for themselves. And then supporting them as they determine what needs to be done to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Supporting them as they attend to their learning and growth without losing sight of the need to address their well-being on the way. Well-being really does have to be front seat in all of the work.
Okay. When you say well-being, what's an example of child's well-being?
So, yeah, their well-being is about attending to their needs on the way to building skills, getting out there and, performing, showing up in the world, taking care of our responsibilities, whatever that is. So health needs, adequate sleep, adequate social support, encouragement, healthy eating, getting physical activity, having time for fun and leisure and play, all of the things that humans need, all the way down to our cells, the things that we're wired for to be healthy, those things being addressed while we're out there doing the academic stuff and the work stuff, not neglecting those for the sake of results related to academic success or career success.
So in some cases, that could mean kind of a recalibration of how we approach this.
Oh, absolutely. When we're considering setting them up for success at home, a lot of that work is on the parents to be able to understand the needs of the young person at each stage of development, the differences in the needs of a child versus an adolescent versus an emerging adult and older adults, and ensuring that the expectations and demands that they're putting on their kids at home are in line with supporting their positive development, really nurturing their well-being while helping them to succeed academically.
Okay. And so I work with young people. You work with young people. I'm sure we both see this. Parents who are with good intentions in their child's best interest, pushing them to get good grades, for instance, results that have been labeled as success in our society. What advice do you have for those parents to help your children become this healthy version of successful?
Yeah. Good question. So the first thing that comes to mind is the results orientation is the opposite of what we want to promote. It's a process orientation that we want to promote academically. It's not about the grade. It's about the learning that's happening on the way to the grade. And if you were to compare a C student and an A student, it is very possible to consistently attain straight A's and not learn anything on the way to those straight A's. A simple memorizing and answering questions rather than actually absorbing the content, making connections, meaningful connections to what we already know so that we can actually learn to apply the information in real life scenarios, which is the entire function of our soaking in any of this knowledge. So process orientation first, and then really promoting the focus on the learning and growth rather than the result. If we focus on the learning and growth, the result will come through the learning and growth. There will be, even if you have struggling students, if you attend to the learning and growth, grades will improve incrementally based on the learning that's happening. So really just getting in there to understand who our kids are. Often parents who have more than one child, one of the things that we learn when we have that second or third or fourth child is that they are all different. we
Mhm.
can't expect that they're all going to function in the same way academically, or that they're all going to be able to succeed in the same way. So really understanding their individual differences, personality traits, character traits, their own natural talent, skills, strengths, and helping them to use those to support learning whatever the skills are, whatever the content is, finding a way to be successful at school and in the classroom, making it more than grades and considering what are the things that they can gain from their academic experience, their social interactions, their social and emotional competencies, their self-management skills, learning the self-discipline stuff, learning how to build healthy habits, learning how to do something even when I don't feel like doing it, learning how to break things down into manageable pieces, taking an assignment and understanding what's going to be required of that, how to break that down into bits where I can attend to that and have enough space and capacity to learn the content while I'm completing it. So many things that we could tease out in that one.
So let me, if you don't mind, I'm going to channel the nervous parent
Okay.
right now and ask you, okay, Dr. Leah, that sounds good. What good is honoring a child's strengths when they're, when they're going, okay, I'll admit it. When they're going to junior college instead of USC, that's where success is. It's who you know. It's schools are so competitive. How can I? So I need to push my kid because that's the world we're living in.
So the first thought that comes to mind there is understanding that our own needs or desires or goals for our kids may be very different from what they want for themselves. We've got to be careful not to project our own goals for our children onto them. So my first question would be, where is that determination coming from? That idea of success relating to going to a particular school, maybe studying a particular major, going into a particular field, earning a particular amount of money, being connected in a particular way. Is that the parent's goal for the child, or is that the child's goal for themselves because those are their intrinsic motivations? If those are the child's intrinsic motivations, then we're here to support whatever it is that they are choosing for themselves, because every individual has a right to choose their own path in life. It's how can we support them in deciding what that's going to be for them and determining what's going to be necessary to make it happen.
What's the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation?
Yeah, so motivation is fuel. It's basically our energy to do something or not. So if someone is activated to do something, that is being motivated. Intrinsic motivation comes from inside the person. So it is an urge from the inside. So it's one of the I want to, or an urge to thing. It's an approach fuel, right? Extrinsic is from the outside, and it's more like the carrot and stick motivator. So it's related to reward or punishment. And the only way that it actually turns on is if the reward or punishment are still present or possible. So it's not self-activating. It is based on the presence or absence of those external motivators. Intrinsic motivation is sustainable for the long term. It's the difference between having, if we're using the carrot and stick analogy, it's the difference between having, the horse that is, just trotting along all on its own because it wants to, it's enjoying the ride and just wants to be out there doing the thing, or the one that is standing still and only moving if it has the carrot directly in front of its face or it's being hit and made to move. Humans function that way. And one of the struggles with motivation academically, especially in the K through 12 experience, which is actually one of the primary reasons why so many parents are seeking academic coaching for their kids, is that the K through 12 education experience is compulsory. They don't get to choose if they go to school or not, and or what they learn. It is being decided for them, and their subjects are also being decided for them. So kids and teens are often struggling with lacking intrinsic motivation in school because they didn't get to decide to be there. It is absolutely run by extrinsic motivation, reward and punishment. What is sad is that extrinsic motivation is more like a short-term boost type of fuel. So it's like, hitting the little NOS button in the car, the little boost button that you jump and you go really fast, really quickly, but then you're back to, just trotting along. With intrinsic motivation, we're in it because we want to be there. We don't need anyone to tell us that we need to do something. We don't need reward or punishment. We do it for the sake of the thing because we want to do it. So we actually have the opposite going on with intrinsic motivation, where people can be so intrinsically motivated that they can burn themselves out because they just want to be doing this thing and would choose to be doing this thing. And sometimes even, at the expense of their own health. So that's another side of the coin to support is, the balance, right?
Right. Which can also, there's always a continuum that can also get in the way of well-being.
Exactly.
Is being type A. I'll tell our viewers this. You and I sort of met because we were both emailing each other like on a Sunday.
I don't remember that, but I'm sure it's
you
true.
Don't remember? Okay. Yeah. I remember. I said to you, you're working on Sunday too. So there can also be, kind of type A overly intrinsically motivated. And I've run into that with young people I work with. And so in terms of, this is something I hear a lot, which I think kind of captures the motivation issue in terms of parenting. Someone I'm working with will say, I was motivated to do my homework and I was about to do it. Then one of my parents came in, reminded me to do it, and I lost motivation. What do you make of that?
Yeah. So self-determination is really key. Self-determination is one of the things that we promote in our coaching work. It is very much about helping the young person tap into their own sense of its choice, So their sense of
Mm-hmm.
autonomy, I get to choose to do this. I get to manage my own time. Trust in themselves, and others trust in them that they can manage their own stuff. And then the sense of self-efficacy that comes from them being able to succeed. So following
Mm-hmm.
through, them setting up their own systems, following through, being able to see success. Self-determination is key because it is tapping into their internal motivation that I chose to do
Mm-hmm.
this. I am doing it because this was my plan. These are the actions I was going to take. I did it my way. So they have a sense of autonomy in that. But they're able to take ownership when they get to decide and follow through in a way that fits for them, rather than someone having to tell them do X, Y, Z. When we are too directive, and this is human, this is not just the parent-child relationship, this is human across the board. If we're considering our just general interpersonal relationships and top-down relationships between like leaders and their subordinates in other employment settings,
Mm-hmm.
we need our space to be able to decide what we're going to do and when and how we're going to follow through with that. We need to be able to function as autonomous beings. We need the freedom. We need choice. So a parent coming in and telling the child to do something, it steps on the child's willingness, readiness to do that thing. So it's actually a really good indicator that the child is ready to step into ownership, because when they're younger, as in the childhood stage, being more directive and providing more guidance, that is actually necessary while they're so young that they really need the oversight to be able to stay safe and to learn.
Right.
But in adolescence, they're growing beyond that, where it's now time for them to step into owning their own process and taking responsibility for what it is that they have to do. So as parents, if we notice that the reminders or the directions or the guidance that we used to give in their childhood, if we notice that they begin to push back on that, that's evidence that they're ready to step into more ownership and accountability around that, and to pull back on our own need to be involved.
Yeah. And what I think is sometimes we miss or we don't take seriously as parents is this is their developmental level in adolescence to become their own person. And if they're screaming out for it, they want to do it their way. And something that sort of occurred to me is when a child is young, they want your approval. As they get older, it's sort of like they want to impress us, meaning it's their thing. They sort of want their parents to go, wow, how did you do that? Because that's the kind of validation somebody wants when they're becoming their own person. And the minute we step in and tell them for the 50th time, this is what you need to do, we're robbing them of that.
Yep.
Because the best they can do now is what we told them to do. How boring is that?
Yeah.
Who needs that?
Yes.
If
And
you're
then
a
there's the need to rebel. Yes, absolutely. The fact that they are developing their sense of self, their identity, they are developing their confidence in themselves, in their abilities, and they're testing out so many new functions that are just in rapid development during adolescence, between puberty and their mid-20s. And as parents, because we're so far on the other side of that, we often forget how scary that time was, how uncertain, and stressful, and how they are very often second guessing and overthinking and self-doubting and, taking hits to their confidence and their sense of self around things that we perceive as no big deal because we've been there. We have all of the life experience that dulls that, right? But all of this is still raw for them.
Yeah.
So our coming in and trying to direct or tell or fix or, any of that, it's basically, it is a hit to their confidence that that parents don't believe that they can do this without having to be told.
Right.
Right.
And in some ways, as parents, this might sound a little dramatic, but what we perceive as our life wisdom doesn't help our kids.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, keep your life out of your kid.
True.
You figured out one way to do it. Is that actually, first of all, is that actually what you want to impart to your kid? And it's the idea of, as they get older, let your kid live life, then bring it to you. Help them solve their problems with their life. But we often we want to control the whole thing, tell them what life's about, tell them what's going to happen, say things like that are discouraging.
Experience is the teacher of all things.
Right. Let them experience.
And we forget that.
Life.
Yeah. Yes. It is theirs. It is theirs to learn on the way.
Right.
And that is how the lessons stick.
And who knows, maybe they'll be great. Maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe they'll achieve what looks unrealistic to us. Absolutely.
Yes. And our wisdom really is about our own experience. It's wisdom to us because it was so powerful and relevant for us, but they are a different human being raised in a different generation, in different contexts. They have to develop their own. Our being present and being supportive and accessible, those are all very important. Being engaged and being involved and all of that good stuff to the extent that they want us to or need us to. But the control thing that you mentioned really does show up as the biggest barrier for a lot of the people who I work with. And it's a difficult learning curve for parents to let go. And it has a lot to do with fear. The fear that bad things are going to happen to our kids, and nobody wants anything bad to happen to their kid. So you try to hold on as tightly as possible and direct as much as possible so as to keep them safe. But that actually does the opposite. If we are too controlling and too directive, so much so that we are limiting their ability to build the skills that they need to be successful and effective independently in adulthood. And when we're not around, that's a problem.
This is something I want to talk to you about. Our own anxiety showing up, sort of anxiety parenting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a shift from reactive to responsive that that's important in parenting. And it's something that we have a hard time doing if we're not attending to our own needs. And it's very often an issue where parents put their own self-care on the back burner or haven't done their own work. So they are still parenting out of this reactive space rather than being able to be more responsive in their interactions with their kids and whoever's in their household. So the very first thing that we've got to do as parents is check in on our own well-being.
It's so important, and it's so difficult. And like you said, so much of these conversations are sort of bigger than us. It's not what we prioritize in many instances in our culture. In this country, we're not even proud of self-care.
No,
that's like weak or something.
Yeah.
Parents don't have talks about self-care.
Yeah. And this actually ties into the example that you gave earlier about the nervous parent wanting their kid to, do well in school, get good grades, to go to that university. We have very limited awareness about human energy, capacity, and limitations, stress and performance. This is also one of the most common things that I have to coach clients around, but that one of the most impactful understandings and one of the bits of awareness that is generally needed at both the parent and child level, because we don't have this broad awareness in our society about how stress and performance work. And this gets to that, we talk about Yerkes-Dodson law and arousal theory, and how if you think about stress, and I usually explain it with like a little, the speedometer, but if you consider like there's the green and then the orange and then the red. So like as the gauge goes up, if you think of the way that stress and performance work, stress is not all bad. We all need stress. Stress is basically one of the things that helps to motivate us, to kick us into gear. But what matters is how many stressors we have and the types of stressors that we have. So what happens is, like, if we have no stress, we also have no performance. So if we have no responsibilities, no activities to engage in, nothing required of us or expected of us, we also have like zero motivation to do anything. So you have that boredom, discontent, lethargy, all of that stuff going on down here in the zero stress zone. But then as you start to add stressors, we start to wake up and our performance starts to rise as the stressors increase. This is the green zone stuff. So as we start to wake up, we start to engage with life. We start to, go and handle the tasks, go to school, do the work, engage with humans, go do the activities, extracurriculars, whatever the things are. As we're engaging with life, our performance is increasing. Our whole internal experience is turning on. We're waking up, we're becoming alive. We're feeling positive emotions. We're accessing our critical thinking, our, all of our capacity. Basically, it's like somebody turns on the light and all of our stuff is now running so that we can engage. This is all green stuff. Now, the way that it works is that, like, comfort zone is like right up here at the edge of the green. And then like right beyond the comfort zone is our peak performance. So it's like stretch place right beyond comfort zone stuff. where we tap into our optimal performance. And that is the place where I am the most engaged, the most alive, the most in my vitality. So I'm accessing my optimism, my positive thinking, my positive emotions, and I am like meeting the challenge and tackling it and learning and growing and all of the good stuff. The issue, though, is that just beyond peak is the tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we get into the orange and we start to fall into distress and overwhelm.
So too much stress.
Too much stress.
Stress is motivating us until it's not, till it's burning us out.
Yes, until it starts to burn us out. So at that tipping point, we start to experience the mind and body indicators that we're going into the red. Something needs to happen here. And those indicators are things like feeling overwhelmed, feeling like more scattered, impatient, more like irritable, like having a harder time thinking or being able to think clearly, being more reactive, and the negative like mindset stuff, negative attitude stuff, negative emotions are coming up more often. Like the negativity stuff, those are messages that are saying something's wrong. And it's, our mind and body are trying to push back to get us to push back on things, right? And if we were to pause and check in on that and say, what's going on? However, what happens most often is that we don't pay attention to those messages. And what happens most often is that we're being judged from the outside for being reactive, being negative. And we are then in turn very often judging ourselves for that and just internalizing that as just being us. And it's not just us, it's something being wrong. So what ends up happening is because we don't have this understanding or awareness, we're not doing anything to address this and we fall into burnout. So eventually we, that gauge, right? Just like with the vehicle, eventually it's just going to pop.
Right.
You're just going to fall into, basically your body does what it has to self-correct.
Right.
To protect you before death.
And then we get into what we might see as being a little dysfunctional or maladaptive.
Yes.
Because now we're in a protective mode. On some level, our depression is trying to protect us. Yes,
absolutely.
And what might you say to the parent that, has the kid, let's say, has their 16, 17-year-old, just to paint a picture, in their room 10 hours a day, gaming, really isolated, don't appear to be focused on their day-to-day academics. What might be a first step to helping them be self-determined and increase their well-being?
So when we think about these, like those ways of being in the world, we've got to consider, one, that people get to choose their ways of being in the world, right? But then two, as a parent, we also have responsibilities for encouraging healthy behavior, right? Instilling positive habits, and to the extent, that it's helpful, not pushing our kids away, right? Or just causing unnecessary stressors. So it would be checking in on what is it that we're seeking in approaching them about this. Like, are we wanting them to change a behavior? Do we have concerns about whatever that behavior is? And are the concerns valid? Are these, is there evidence that whatever it is that they're doing is detrimental to their health or their safety? So, for instance, the kid who may enjoy gaming and may be very good at it, that kid may also be highly introverted and may have a beautiful time engaging with friends online or while playing games. And so they're actually meeting a lot of their social connection needs by being in the gaming world and connecting with their friends. They may be, very often young people are gaming with peers, from school or who they know, in person. So we've just got to be careful not to be judging what they're doing before we have enough evidence to know what's actually happening. Again, because, different generations, different, different contexts, different considerations. So checking in, getting to know them and the world that they're engaging in. And we do that by, number one, approaching the relationship with our child as, paramount. Like our attending to maintaining a strong relationship with our kid is how we're then able to know enough about their world to be able to inform a decision about, is there a change that needs to happen here or not?
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, because that is what this podcast is about: connection and relationship. The idea that if we're improving our relationship, our connection, our respect, and of course mixing in some structure for their well-being, it's going to take care of itself.
Absolutely.
As opposed to trying to control the situation. And I'm hearing that, it's a lot of letting go. So we want to try not to just look at results, but at the same time, if we focus on well-being, it's going to intersect with results. Probably because kids generally want to do well. Academically, on some level. That's their life. Their life is school. Till they're 18, at least generally. And human beings generally want to have purpose and want to do well and want to make the most of it.
Yeah.
But it's going to look different than we think it.
Yeah. And for that, the example of that kid being in their room 10 or 12 hours a day, gaming on the weekend, if there are indicators that their health is deteriorating, say there are indicators that they're not eating, they're not sleeping, they seem to be depressed. These are like new things that we're noticing about their demeanor, their personality, their mood that are not characteristic of who they are. Those may be indicators to say, hey, let's get out of the house today and go do something fun.
Do you mind if I ask you a question as a parent?
No.
How old are your kids?
So we have 4. We have 3 boys. They are 21, 21, 19, and then a daughter who is 11.
Perfect. I have two questions. First one is that those are great ages. I just kicked it up to 2 questions. So anyway, here's the one, actually 2 questions. What was your relationship with Parent View during high school?
So I have to share that my parenting approach shifted significantly when I went to grad school and learned all about psychology.
Mm.
So my kids were very lucky that I went through this education when the three boys were in very early adolescence. So they were like somewhere between like 8 and 10 at that time. Ideal timing for me to have this knowledge. And it really did contribute to a complete 180 in the way that I was parenting. Prior to that knowledge, my parenting was very much about control and protect and all of the, hold all of the little ones very tightly, right? But learning all of this information just in time,
Yeah,
it gave them an adolescence and their, that time through going through middle school and high school, and now where they are today, just a much better environment to get to thrive. And that's what we were able to shift to, was accessing their ability to thrive and to really to flourish. It is witnessing them blossom into who humans can be when they are nurtured and supported rather than being tightly controlled. There is a huge difference. So during their high school years, and even now with my daughter, who is, she's in 5th grade, there are just so many things that I've done differently that had I not known what I know, that I would not have done. And I'm just very grateful that they have the life that they do. It wouldn't, like for the high school stuff, one of the things that I am the proudest of, and, I say this as someone who in my own teenage years was just completely out of control, and I would not have wanted my kids to hang out with me when I was a teenager.
Got it.
But one of the things that I'm the proudest of is that throughout those teenage years, when, kids start hanging out and staying out late with friends and, all of that, starting to, try to use that freedom to test things and all that good stuff, my kids always came home. Not because they had a curfew, because our kids did not have a hard, fast curfew during their teenage years on the weekends. They came home on their own because that's where they wanted to be. And their friends came to our house. We would very often have, in the morning when they came home late, their friends would be there with us. The most beautiful thing that I take from that experience is that, my situation was the polar opposite. I wanted to stay as far away from home as possible for as long as possible. But our home is a safe and supportive environment where our kids want to be. They come home by choice, even when, other kids would have stayed out. So that's a key takeaway from how things have been affected in my own home with parenting. For my daughter, one of the things that's been interesting is watching how she experienced the pandemic and being out of school for a while. With everything happening, she was homeschooled for a year and a half. And when she came back into school in the 4th grade, she was struggling with catching back up academically. And I told her teachers not to focus on her academic stuff. We can catch her up academically. I do not care about her grades. What I care about is her finding social connections. I need her to make friends. I need her to feel cared about and supported at school. And as soon as that was able to happen and she was able to connect and make friends and want to be there, her grades corrected themselves.
Right.
That is how it works. Attend to the needs of the human. The human is able to perform.
Wow, that's a great story. And I think, another important takeaway, and you just said it, when kids are comfortable, they can skyrocket quickly. They can catch up. We don't have to necessarily panic when they're behind.
Absolutely.
And how about parent view? Getting online, looking at your kids' grades. Did you do that?
That is something that I have only ever done if it's necessary. And only if it's something where like my kid has come to me about struggling. Because it's their work. It's for them to do. It's for them to attend to. It's their learning, their results, all of it. It's theirs. So especially when they got into high school, that's when they are at the age where they need to take ownership. They need to be able to have that privacy, as much privacy as possible, to figure it out and work it out and do as well as they can. And if they need help, to reach out for it. So for my kids, that was really the way of managing it. It was, this is your thing. If you're struggling, if you need help, say something and we'll get the help that you need, you know. Otherwise, you doing as well as you need to do and as well as you want to do is fine. It's your path. You get to decide. How much effort do you want to put into this? What kind of results do you want to be able to walk away with? You choose. My daughter with the younger age children, elementary, middle school, when they're still at an age where they need more guidance and support, they need us to be paying attention to if they're struggling, to be able to call in the support or get them what they need. There's a different need at each developmental stage.
Real quick, the learning curve you went through when you went to grad school, how did your partner or husband come along with that type of parenting?
So he was 100% on board with the shift. Yeah, he is. What's interesting is that in our house, the personalities, like his personality is much more in line with all of the kids. My personality is more of the director, you know? So my shift was one that then became aligned with their needs.
Okay. So they were all good.
They were all happy. Yeah. Very happy.
Okay. But it's really, I mean, I think it's helpful to hear that. You're the teen coach with all this experience, and it didn't just come naturally to you.
Oh no, I had to learn all of it in every way. Grad school, parenting, coaching teens and parents of teens. And I think that the richest experience obviously comes from having lived both sides of the parenting coin.
And can I ask what your grown-up kids are doing?
Yeah. So one of them is working full-time at a gym, and he's working on becoming a personal trainer. That's his passion. One of them is going to school for engineering, at the community college, and he's also working part-time at Home Depot. And then one of them works full-time at Home Depot while he is preparing to enroll in community college to then go to the military. That is his dream. Yeah.
So,
and
go ahead.
They all still live with us, and they don't want to leave. We've given them until they're 23.
Okay, has that number moved by chance, or is it a hard 23?
No, it moved with the pandemic. It was 21.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. The pandemic was about 2 years.
And the economic impact has been challenging for those, first time apartment renters and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But we're happy to have them here. It sounds
like it.
Yeah.
It sounds like you guys are tight. And that was I really love that. The idea of they always came home.
Yeah. It's the coolest thing when I drive up in the morning and all of their cars are outside. It's just, again, from, having my experience be the polar opposite of that. It's the best evidence that you can have as a parent, I think. That you've done it well enough that this is where they want to be.
Dr. Leah, thank you so much. This has been incredibly helpful and engaging. And I know my listeners are going to get a lot out of it.
Well, good. I'm glad. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And we're back. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I'm inspired as a parent, not just as a therapist, life, whatever else it is I do. I feel like what this discussion did for me was it took these concepts that I feel like I've been sort of hinting at, and she just sort of laid it out. Focus on the process, not the results. Wow, it's revolutionary, but I think we can do it. I think it's worth it. Focus on them learning rather than just on their grades, with trust that the results that are appropriate for this particular kid, this particular individual, will come. I got straight A's once I started to get into college. The more I progressed through college, I got straight A's, and I'm proud of that. At the same time, I have to say, it didn't necessarily reflect me learning. I could have learned a little more if I had lowered down my expectation of grades. I remember I had a professor at CSUN, Julie, if you're out there, that said, Dan, bring it down, bring down the stress and enjoy this. I was obsessed with having a 4.0 just because it was in my head. It wasn't even necessary, especially once you get to grad school. The point is, the learning and the attention to our children's specific needs will take them where they want to go. And that doesn't mean hands-off parenting. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to not just tell your kid to get off their phone, but to get to know exactly what they're doing. And so we can appropriately figure out how we want to structure the rules and boundaries in the home. And for our final takeaway, I know there's been so many great takeaways from this conversation. This is for those of you that are kind of doubting this process, and I get it. Kind of saying, I don't know, but letting go of grades and expectations and our perception of our children's success. Keep in mind what Dr. Leah said. When we tend to their well-being, when we focus on the core principles and values of our parenting, for instance, well-being, giving them balanced skills to cope with life, the results are going to take care of themselves. Okay. And they might even be better results, greatness and excellence that we didn't anticipate because it's intrinsically motivated. You know what? Hey, everything's a risk. I'm willing to bet on that. Are you? I'm going to bet on my son. Let's try to bet on our children that they have it in them, and we just have to give them the right structure, give them the right values, and show them the way. Thank you so much to Dr. Leah Mazzola. Sorry I didn't get to your questions today. We ran a little long. We'll see you in 2 weeks on What Did I Say?